already heard a little bit. To my very far right is Parvesh, incredibly talented actor and comedian. You may have seen him on NBC sitcom Outsourced. He was in Barbershop. Yeah. He is a voice on incredible animated series, Transformers, and incredible comedian as well. So let's give him a big round of applause. Next is Raaginder, an incredibly talented musician who you're going to hear later today as well. Last night I literally just YouTube stalked him for at least an hour. Incredible violinist who does all sorts of genres, everything from hip hop to bhangra to classical. You did a mashup of Hot Light and Bling and Cha-Cha. That was like my jam last night. I loved it. Make sure to check that out. And he is a graduate of Cal Arts and incredibly talented once again. So let's give him a big round of applause. And finally, this is Cassey Ho. She is the creator of Blogilates, which is an incredible YouTube channel with over 2.5 million subscribers. She is now a best-selling author as well, and she also started her own apparel brand too. It's called, what is it called? Body Pop. Yeah. Really, really powerful. I've done some of her workouts, and like literally the next day I just couldn't wake up. I like couldn't get myself out of bed. So it's like once a week for me I can do Blogilates stuff. But let's give Cassey a big round of applause as well. But just to begin, I think what would be great is just for us to hear from each of you just a little bit about your childhood growing up as an AAPI as well. A little bit of where you came from. Also, if you did encounter any bullying, or I think Kelly brought up an interesting point that sometimes we not only are bullied, but can be bullies as well. So what your experience was that maybe in your childhood, and we can just go down the line here.
Hi, everyone. So I think for me, bullying, well, I'm going to talk about the race and growing up Asian American. So my dad always wanted me to be a doctor, as many of you probably have experienced in growing up too. But I think because of my Chinese and Vietnamese upbringing, it hindered a lot of my passions. And growing up, I'm very obedient. I go to AP classes, honors classes, captain of the tennis team, all that kind of stuff, trying to be really well-rounded. And I thought my parents were always right. So when they told me that I couldn't become a fashion designer or do all these other more creative things, I believed them. And so I ended up getting a degree in biology, but my heart just really wasn't in there. Eventually I decided that I wasn't going to live for them, I'm going to live for myself. And that really upset them. We didn't talk for a few years. I moved over to the East Coast, pursued my own thing. But luckily, Pilates and design, was able to come back to me because of YouTube. And I think YouTube is such an amazing space because if I had tried to go into any type of entertainment, which I wasn't even trying to do that. I was trying to be a Pilates instructor. But the society said, this is what we like. This is cool. We love your workouts. It's really good. I don't care what you look like. I like the workouts and they're effective. So without YouTube, I don't think I would have had the opportunities that I have today. Being the only Asian American in Target stores with a DVD in the fitness section. And it's, thank you. See, that's pretty cool, right? And I'm just very thankful for the community and the fans because you guys say what you want and there's no agent or outside person saying that you can't do that. It's just yourself doing what you can and hopefully people like that. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Hello everyone, thank you for having me today. So my background's quite complicated. I am Sikh. I'm born in Thailand. And I moved to America in 2001 as an 8-year-old. So growing up, I was actually, very outgoing, flamboyant kid. I was really free, but I was sheltered. I hadn't really experienced any bullying until I moved to the United States. And basically, I actually moved a month exactly before September 11 happened. So right when I moved, it was summer, of course, so I didn't go to school. But in the beginning, I already started facing bullying from my cousins, because I was a young one, so I always got picked on. If you're the younger sibling, you always get picked on. So that was already there. People made fun of the way I talked, because I had an accent. And once September 11 happened, and when school started, I was able to handle the family stuff because I knew at the end of the day there's still, there's still love in there. But when September 11 happened, it became kind of dark in the sense that you had kids that are 6 to 12 years old that come up to you and just say, "I hate you. Go back where you came from. You're a murderer. You're a terrorist." And not only kids, you have their parents coming up to you after school, grown adults coming up to you saying, "You need to get out of this country. You're a terrorist." And so, that was growing up. It was actually about 2, 3, 4 years after 9/11. I've faced a lot of discrimination. That time was really heightened as far as discrimination goes for the Sikh community, and even like while middle school was happening, it's interesting for me because I also faced racism from a lot of minorities, which is weird to me because it's like, we go through the same struggles. And one time, I remember I was playing football in middle school, and this one guy just kept on talking about my turban, this and that. And then, I kind of gave him a nudge, and then he like threw me down on the floor. And then I was just like, "Man, why do you have to be so racist?" And right when I said that, his face went blank, and he realized what he was doing. And I feel like that's something that's stuck with me will stick with me for the rest of my life, because it's just something that it's something that moment of me actually calling him out for being racist, and he's a minority, kind of just hopefully, changed his life, I hope. And yeah, and then when you grow up, similar to what you were saying, being a musician and being grown up in an Asian household, luckily for me, my parents were really supportive. They're musicians as well, but amongst the the aunties and the uncles, they're just like, "What are you doing with your life? You're not gonna achieve anything with music. You're gonna fail, this and that." And it's really hurtful. But for me today, it's just I kind of push forward, and I'm at a point where they're satisfied now. And yeah, bullying, it's actually been a really big part of my life, and I'm super against it, and I do hope one day we find a solution for this, because it's affected a lot of people and will continue to. In fact, I think it's even worse now because back when I went to school, it was like you face bullying at school, and when you go home, you still have that family safe zone. But now it's like you have internet, so you get bullied on the internet, which is even more dangerous. And so like kids nowadays don't even have any breathing room. So I hope this problem gets solved, and organizations like this is a step forward to doing that. So thank you.
I grew up outside of Chicago, so I'm a suburbanite, and this is also kind of that, like my hometown Naperville is very super white and super Asian. So it wasn't a big deal growing up for me, just because of my privilege of where my parents decided to move to. Like my high school had a planetarium. So and Jesse Jackson would bring inner city kids from Chicago out to Naperville, to our hometown, to show the kind of disparity between inner city, CPD to CPS to just like a private, not even a private, just like our town. So that's just the backdrop of where I grew up from, like where it was not kind of an issue until, and then a bit of it also is like when you're an actor, when you're a clown, I learned quick, like at 5, like if you make people laugh, then you're already in. So like, and also like my parents made me start reading like at 2 or 3, so that was like a novelty. Like I was the first storyteller in kindergarten because I could read Where the Wild Things Are. So there is that element that we do have some advantage of, like being it with education, being where our parents worked so hard to put us in certain neighborhoods and towns where we didn't have as bad as, say, some people who might have had a better or lower social economic status. So if you made people laugh, I was kind of in. High school was a breeze for me, truly. I'm not trying to say this like to be like, yay me, I'm awesome, but like it was just, I was in theater, I found my freak flag with those, the theater nerds, and that was it. So I had my group. I remember one Indian girl in high school, because like where you would see a bit of it would be like at the pep assemblies. You would see like the black kids sit together around like a sea of white, and then like the Asian kids started doing that too. And this girl said like, dude, Parvesh, hang out with your own race. I'm like, oh, my theater friends are over here. So is that element too of like, sometimes we can't be so insular too. It is the allies, the friends, find interests other than just race and religion to, so we're not just other, we are a part of it. The 9/11 story, of course, is like, I was in college, because I'm much older than you. And there was that thing when Chicago was doing those cows on parade. Do you remember that? Those like glass ceramic, it was just a public art display that gave the city a lot of attention. Every store would have it, like the Marshall Fields one would be like all green and whatnot. So we would take photos and we would like get on top of them, we'd be drunk, and then we'd just like get on top and like take photos. And I remember one guy saying, what are you taking photos of? I'm like, I'm taking photos of Nancy on the cow. What do you think I'm taking? But it was that implication of like, cause you know, like there was that thing of like people getting stopped for taking photos around 9/11 because you're plotting, you're doing something. So that was like that one moment of like, oh, now I get it. And Nancy, my friend, is Haitian American, and I'm like, oh, Nancy, now I understand a little bit what it's like to be black. Because she would say, like, she would tell me, like, I get followed in stores. I'm like, Nancy, stop being paranoid. And then it started happening to me, and I'm like, aha. It's just that shift sometimes that does happen. But, you know, overall, I think it was luckier because comedy deflects so much. And if you're quick, I mean, if someone gives you something, you give it right back. It's true, you know, take improv classes. That might help.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be flip. I just also want to be very blunt and honest and not to say like, it's not so much of a woe is me story. I was also raised Sikh, but my dad, you know, he cut his hair right when he came here. So my brother and I were never raised with it. So we didn't have to even get that alienation before even 9/11 of just being like, everyone asking us, like when our cousins would come visit from Delhi, like what's the jura, what's the pagri? You know, we'd be like, oh, that's their hair.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much I want to ask you guys about, but I think, Raaginder, you brought up a really interesting point about nowadays cyberbullying. I know there are a lot of young people in the audience now and a lot of young people watching on Periscope, and Cassie, you and I, almost everything that we do is now digital and online. I guess I kind of want to hear from you first about like, what has your experience been with cyberbullying? What have you seen, or have you ever been even a victim of that? And how do we combat that? Because that's really tough too, because there's no face a lot of times. There's just a name or a username and all this hateful stuff being said. But I'd love to hear kind of what your personal experience has been, but also what you kind of share with some of your younger fans, because I know you've got such an empowering story for them too.
So cyberbullying for me happens every single day, every minute, but it's how you handle it and how you choose to react to it, right, that you can control. In the beginning, when I put up these YouTube videos, I was just doing it to teach 40 people at 24 Hour Fitness, my real live class, how to work out before I was gonna leave because they were gonna miss me. And then thousands, hundreds of thousands of people started watching that video, which was awesome. And then I would start getting some comments on my body or things like this. No one ever attacked me on my professionalism as a certified fitness instructor, which is cool, because that was actually what I was afraid of, like, oh, your form isn't good or something like that. But then people would be like, oh, you have no butt, or oh, your abs aren't flat enough and stuff like that. And that used to like just kill me inside, and I would lay on the couch and cry for a little bit. But now I don't do that anymore, and what I realize is that there's two types of negative comments. There's one that is just straight up hateful, and you click on their profile and there's like no face, no followers, and let me tell you, not a single person has ever come up to my face to say that. So if you're gonna say it online and not be able to say it to my face, then it's just not credible at all. The second type of negative comment may be constructive criticism, which is totally cool because I read that and I'm like, okay, maybe I can do better. But a lot of times, what's really cool about having this community on YouTube is that the fans watch out for you too. So if someone's attacking me for something really stupid, I'll start seeing other fans start kind of arguing with that person for me, so I don't have to do anything to those comments. And I leave a lot of those comments there so people can have that conversation, but if there's anything super hateful, super racist, super just like a plague to the community, I will delete it because there's no point in putting something there because you're letting your comment feed be a soapbox for someone to just start yelling crazy things. So I think with negative comments, you just gotta remember that the people saying what they're saying, it's because of their own insecurities, and they're never probably ever gonna say it to your face. So just understand that, know where they're coming from, it's not from a good place, and just ignore it, because if it's not gonna make you better, if it doesn't give you better energy to add more positivity into the world, then it doesn't really matter. Keep doing your thing.
Absolutely, amen.
Yeah, so for me, luckily, I don't know why, but I haven't been faced with too much racist comments on the internet in my YouTube videos. Usually, what I get is like, "Oh my God, I would never imagine a guy with a turban plays violin so well." Like, but I'm like, what is that supposed to mean, right?
Because of the turban.
Yeah, or that falls in line with, oh, you look good for a Chinese person, you look good for an Indian person. So I mean, that's like the most I've like faced. But I mean, I've seen it with my colleagues that are also YouTube people. They, you go to the comments, and they're like, "Go back, you terrorist! You're not funny. This and that." So it's definitely there. I've experienced those comments like a couple of times, but luckily for me, it's not like too bad.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
Raaginder, just something that you brought up is about 9/11 and how much animosity and how much racial tension that came about during that time. I think very recently what we've seen is there's so much racial tension that's coming back nowadays. I'm really, really curious as we see, and a lot of it has to do with both with race, but with religion. As you see that, and as a Sikh person, like, what kind of advice do you have for young people to respond, especially when it stems from your identity as a person and your religion and your appearance and all of our appearance?
Well, speaking of that, like since the Paris attacks happened last week, and this whole week I've been hearing stories about how there's like Muslim people on the airplanes, and like some crazy person will just like complain about them just because they're talking in Arabic or something. So actually, when I was coming here, flying from the Bay Area, I was gonna bring two of my violins for carry on, and I actually thought, hey, I shouldn't do that because there's two huge like cases that look fishy, right? And someone will probably complain about me. And the fact that I just have to think about that, it's like, it's kind of concerning how our society thinks today. And for advice, it's just for me, I found support with people who went through the same struggle as me. So for me to talk to them, having someone to talk to, and sometimes even confronting people, like, why do you think like that? Why do you do that? It could change a lot, the way the person thinks or the way they interact with you. So that's what advice I would give, at least. Yeah.
Absolutely, thanks. Parvesh, I think one thing that was really interesting was several years ago now when Outsource came out, right?
Yeah.
And it was on NBC, and I was like, wow, there's so many people of color on this show. And now recently we're seeing so many more shows like this, right? With Dr. Ken, we're seeing Fresh Off the Boat, Masters of None. Yeah. So cool, right? We can give a round of applause for that, I think. Yeah. So good, Masters of None, so good. So good. Anyways, yeah, just as an AAPI in this space now, as an actor, very visible. Like, what has that journey been for you as an AAPI? But also, have you seen this change? And also, what do you think that this means for us as as a group now moving forward in media?
It's a mix. I mean, like, Maulik can also speak to this too, because he's much older than I am, and so I look up to him as well. It's all white, everybody, just so you know, that's all dyed. I would say for us, it's so hard to not be cliche sometimes at these things, but it has gotten better. I mean, we are seeing these stories, and let alone Dr. Ken and Fresh Off the Boat, Blackish. We also have, even in like the pilot development right now, Bella Bajaria, who's like the most powerful Indian American woman in television, as like president of NBC Universal Television, has a pilot. Nisha Ganatra, she's one of the directors from Transparent Season 1, directing everywhere. She has a pilot too about growing up in the 80s. So it's not even, we don't even have to worry about like the actors side, because at the end of the day, actors are we're just there to read someone else's words. The power really comes in, I think we're getting more writers. I think CAPE obviously can speak to this a lot. Members of CAPE know that it's the writers and producers. That's where we need the people in first. Actors are going to be there. And in terms of like what you choose to do with your work and how you represent it, it comes down to a couple factors. Do you need to make rent right now? Is it your first job? Are you getting some appearance? I'm turning down stuff now, and so there's a little bit of power of no, but it's really scary, you know? Like, there's an element of like, why did we, wait, besides on Monday for that role, the character's name was Joe, and now it's Pradeep, and he went from having no accent to now an accent. Like, why? You know, if it's not like obviously some like business exchange student from India, then why did that dude who just was like serving coffee or is like the forensic expert, why did we have to shift it? Because then there's that idea of like that they tried to do that reverse inclusion, that they think that they have to make it more ethnic friendly when it's just enough. I love children's shows because you do see it like on Disney and Nickelodeon shows that they look at the world that they populate, even with the background actors. It's so much more of a rainbow coalition than a lot of what we see on network too. Streaming is helping a lot as well. But it is getting easier, I have to say it. You know, like look at just the sheer amount of Asian Americans on television right now.
They're everywhere.
We're
Yeah.
represented much more, and I think we'll continue to do so. I don't think there's a step backward anymore. There might be like a little dip in the valley, but like the stock market keeps going up, up, up over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty cool because I think it's not only happening mainstream, but online in the YouTube community, artists, even everyone here on the stage is very non-traditional, right? In terms of the AAPI mold.
Look at the most of like the YouTube stars. So many are of Asian American backgrounds.
We're just all following Cassie.
Yeah.
So it's hot. Yeah. I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but I think that we're gonna wrap it up soon. Just in closing, I think that, I guess one thing I'd like to hear from you guys is obviously just a word of advice for young people and a piece of encouragement. I think one thing that a lot of young people struggle with is, hey, I'm different and I might be weird, and that's a lot of times what we get picked on for.
Yeah.
And I think now as I get older, I'm like, whoa, that's actually pretty cool that I was different. There are things about me that I'm now proud of that I was different. I don't know if there's anything about like yourself when you were 5 that you're like, man, I'm really ashamed of this, but now you're like, oh, actually that's awesome. Maybe if you could share something like that, but also just a word of advice just in closing.
I will start. So I didn't touch on this earlier, and you all touched on your race and bullying and stuff. I guess kind of like you, I didn't face that much racism.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in Southern California, and I guess I thought I was just like everybody else. Like, not saying that I thought I was white, but I
Right.
thought I was just me. And I didn't realize that I was actually Asian, I suppose, until I moved up to the Bay Area in Union City, where everybody was either Indian, Chinese, Filipino, or Vietnamese. And I went to my first assembly and I saw that everyone had black hair. And that literally was like, oh, this is weird. I mean, even though I had black hair, I had always seen like blonde hair and brown hair and all sorts of stuff. And I guess one of the only times I faced racism kind of was in 6th grade. I was a little bit chubby, and my mom wouldn't let me shave my legs, so I was a little chubby and I had hairy legs. But my last name is Ho, because I'm Chinese.
Yeah.
So Cassey Ho. So not only would they make fun of me for the way I looked, but they called me a hoe. And I remember I didn't even know what that was. I was like, oh, you mean like a garden hoe? Like, why is that even funny? But as far as race affecting who I've been, I've always just focused on my character, my skills, my talent, and even in this YouTube community and in the fitness world, I don't think of myself as an Asian American fitness instructor. I'm just a fitness instructor, and I just do my thing. So for any of you guys out there who feel like your race has anything to do with, you know, what you're capable of, it has nothing to do with that. You just gotta do what you do and do it the best that you can. And I think that's all I have to say about that. Don't let anything about you hinder yourself. Just work on your skill and your talent, because that is what speaks the loudest.
That's great, yeah.
With me, I think the biggest thing that pushed me forward from all the bullying I faced was music. And even then, like in the beginning, so in 5th grade, when I was in 5th grade, that's when they introduced the band or the orchestra. And so my parents are a huge fan of the violins, and for me, I was just like, I want to do what all the guys do, because usually the guys are the ones that bully me, so I want to fit in. So what the guys liked was loud brass instruments, manly instruments, and what all the girls did was the violin. So I was just like, I want to play the trumpet. I come back home, I told my parents about my day. They're like, okay, so what instrument did you pick? I was like, I want to do the trumpet. They just looked at me, they're like, trumpet? Sorry if anyone's a trumpet player here, but I actually love the trumpet, but they were just like, what other instruments do you have? So I was like, violin. So, and then, in the beginning, it was just kind of like, oh, parents trying to make you do that thing. But I noticed as I started practicing more and playing more, and when people started noticing me more, that's like when my art helped the bullying lesson. People like, oh, you're actually pretty good at this, or. And so I think if you have something, in the arts or even in something, just focus on it. And like Kelly was saying earlier, once you like leave school, no one cares if you're popular or anything. It's just what you have as your craft to show it to the world. And I think that's the most important thing as far as overcoming everything.
The older I've gotten so hyper left-wing liberal with my thinking. I'm an atheist as well, and so this is where I do fight with some of my friends about this, that I think that we really need to struggle to keep looking at what really unifies us as people. I always have John Lennon Imagine running through my head, especially about this, where, especially after, like, post the Paris, Baghdad attacks, and it's just, we look for so many things to divide us, even like among our own communities, even like, Indians, like we joke, like Indians are so racist to each other. We have Fair and Lovely. We make this skin lightening product. And it's just, so like, my advice is to really find kind of your tribe, and I think that you make your own. Be it, I know a lot of us today obviously have talked about like our art, but I mean, if it is that you just like want to do like copy editing, or you want to be the best like mathematician and you just want to hang out with your other math elites, do that. I think once you find the group that you have in common, not necessarily the one that you were just born into. I don't like a lot of my relatives, because they're just mean. But then you find your own family. But just my sexual orientation has a big deal to do with that too. Where like I forget that like sometimes that I don't, like how when you list yourself sometimes, like I try to do like human first, but like there are elements of like, do I identify as a gay Indian American or Indian American who's gay? Like there's those elements there. And at the end of the day, it's just like, find something that you want to do, something that you love, and do it with other people that you love. And that's all I want to do.
Absolutely, yeah. We just want to thank you so much for sticking with us. We hope you enjoyed. I could do this for hours. I could literally just listen to you guys talk for hours. But we know that we've got great programming coming up as well. So let's just give our panelists one more round of applause, and we thank you so much.